The Forgotten Past. In the silent emptiness of space, a forgotten story was about to unfold. A story that the galaxy had long ignored. For 1 million years, Earth had been abandoned, its power reduced to dust, its ships left to rust in the dark corners of the galaxy. The humans, once a force to be reckoned with, were lost to the stars, nothing more than whispers in the wind of the galaxy's history. But deep in the heart of space, a signal was about to break the silence. A signal that would shake the galaxy to its core. No one in the galaxy thought much about Earth anymore. The once feared humans had faded into history, replaced by alien species that ruled the galaxy. The Galactic Council, a powerful alliance of alien races, believed that the humans had been defeated long ago. They assumed the Earth was just a forgotten planet, its people nothing more than a distant memory. They were wrong. Deep inside Earth's forgotten military bases, an ancient machine stirred. Millions of years had passed, but the technology still worked. The humans had built their warships to last forever. And now they were waking up. It started with a single ship hidden away in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. Its systems, long dormant, flickered to life. The ship's sensors scanned the surrounding space, and the first signs of life began to spread through the ancient vessel. The humans had been gone for so long that no one remembered them. Their mighty fleets had been left to decay, their weapons forgotten. But that was about to change. As the ship powered up, a strange signal was sent into deep space. It was weak at first, but it carried a message. The message was clear. Earth had not been destroyed, and humanity was still alive. Across the galaxy, alien ships, once confident in their superiority, picked up the strange signal. They dismissed it at first, thinking it was just another piece of ancient debris or some long-lost transmission. But as the signal grew stronger, the first stirrings of fear began to rise among the galactic leaders. The message was clear. Humanity was returning. On Earth, a small group of scientists working in deep space began to notice the unusual energy readings. At first, they thought it was some kind of anomaly, perhaps a random space event or a passing comet. But as they tracked the signal, they realized that it was coming from the heart of an old military base long thought abandoned. What they didn't know was that this was just the beginning. The energy readings grew stronger every day, and the signal became more distinct. The scientists couldn't believe it at first. Was it possible? Could the humans have left something behind? They quickly formed a team to investigate the source of the signal. But what they didn't know was that what they were about to discover would change the course of history forever. The human fleet, once thought to be lost to time, was waking up. Old ships, rusted and decaying, were coming to life. Their weapons, once considered ancient, were now functional again. Their engines roared to life as they began to stir from their long slumber. The humans had left behind a legacy of power, and it was now reawakening. But even as the fleet began to rise, no one could understand what was happening. The signal had been received, but who had sent it? The answer was simple. Humans were still out there somewhere. But where? And why now? The galaxy had forgotten them. They had assumed that the humans were gone forever, that the old warships were just a part of ancient history. But they were wrong. As the warships powered up, the first hints of humanity's true power began to show. The technology they had created was far ahead of anything the galaxy had ever seen. The humans had always been innovators, always creating new ways to fight and survive. Their ships were built to withstand the harshest conditions, and their weapons were designed to destroy anything that stood in their way. The humans had once been feared across the galaxy. Their warships were legendary, their power unmatched. But when they disappeared, the galaxy breathed a sigh of relief. For centuries, no one thought about them. But now, as the first ship left Earth's orbit, the galaxy was about to remember why they had been so terrified of humanity. In the quiet of space, a new threat was rising, and no one was ready for it. Back on Earth, the scientists watched in awe as the first warship blasted into space, its massive engines roaring to life. It was a sight they had only read about in history books. The ship moved with the grace and power of a predator, its hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. The humans were back, and they were not coming to beg for mercy. The galactic empires had long forgotten Earth, assuming that their power had crushed the humans once and for all. But now, a new era was dawning. The humans were returning, and they were bringing their war fleet with them. The first ship entered the galaxy's outer borders, its sensors scanning the stars. The crew, though small in number, were experienced. They knew what they had to do. They were the first of many, the tip of the spear that would soon pierce the heart of the galaxy. They had one mission: to reclaim Earth's place in the stars, and to show the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. As the ship moved through space, it sent out a warning to the galaxy. The message was simple: humanity had returned, and this time, they weren't leaving. The first steps had been taken, and the humans were on their way to reclaim what was once theirs. The galaxy would soon learn the truth, that humanity was not gone, and they were not weak. They had been waiting for the right moment, and now that moment had come. As the ship moved deeper into the galaxy, the first signs of panic began to spread among the alien empires. The message had been received. The humans were back, and nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy was vast, but even in its endless expanse, the humans' return would soon be felt by all. The first ship, the Eclipse, had pierced the silent void and was now venturing further into the unknown, heading toward the heart of the galaxy. Its sleek hull cut through the stars with deadly precision, and aboard it, the crew of humans, small in number but unmatched in determination, prepared for what was to come. They had only one mission: reclaim their place among the stars. The Eclipse was no ordinary vessel. It had been built centuries ago, before humanity's fall from grace. Its systems were unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. Designed to withstand the most extreme environments and to fight against the most formidable enemies, it had been deactivated for thousands of years, waiting for the moment when humanity would rise again. That moment had arrived. As the Eclipse advanced deeper into galactic space, it sent a signal, weak at first, but growing stronger with each passing minute. The message was simple: humanity has returned. The signal, though not highly advanced by modern galactic standards, carried with it a weight that no one could ignore. It had been centuries since Earth had been wiped from the galactic maps. To most of the galaxy's races, humanity was a thing of legend, a species that had fallen into obscurity. But now, something had stirred in the forgotten corners of space. The Galactic Council, a coalition of the most powerful alien races in the universe, had long since forgotten about Earth. Their eyes were focused on more pressing matters: political power, territorial expansion, and their endless struggle to maintain dominance. They had heard whispers of humanity's power once, long ago, but those stories were dismissed as nothing more than myth. Now, the stories were coming true, and the galaxies would soon feel the full force of humanity's return. A few alien ships, stationed near the outer edges of known space, first intercepted the signal. They were unmanned scouting ships, far from the central empires, sent to monitor any potential threats that might arise in the distant void. They didn't expect much. But when the Eclipse's signal reached them, their systems went into high alert. The human message, though faint, was unmistakable. The news spread quickly. The Galactic Council, in its vast chambers filled with representatives from 100 species, sat in stunned silence. The message was clear: the humans had returned, and they were no longer the fragile species the galaxy had once known. Who is sending this signal? One of the council members, a tall and formidable Zaldar, asked, his voice deep and full of authority. "It's coming from deep space, near the remnants of the Sol system," replied a technician, his eyes wide with shock. "We've checked the coordinates. It's Earth. The humans. They're back." There was an audible gasp in the room. The Zaldar and the other leaders exchanged uneasy glances. They had always assumed that humanity was long gone, lost to the sands of time. They had dismissed it as a fluke when a few scattered human artifacts had been found during past explorations. But this was different. "We've been underestimating them," said another council member, a Gathix, its voice high-pitched and sharp. "Humanity was thought to be a threat long ago. We wiped them out, didn't we?" The Zaldar nodded grimly. "Yes, but that was centuries ago. We assumed they were gone. And now, their ships, their fleet, they're returning. What do we do?" A representative from the peaceful Iron species asked, nervously shifting in his seat. "We have to take action. We can't allow them to take us by surprise." The room erupted in voices, each leader expressing a different opinion. Some wanted to ignore the signal, dismissing it as a mistake. Others called for immediate action, urging the council to mobilize its fleets and prepare for war. But amid the chaos, the Zaldar remained calm. His eyes were focused on the signal, the faint message still echoing across their systems. "Send a fleet," he ordered. "We need to find out what they want. We cannot let them catch us off guard again." The decision was made. Within moments, several ships, some of the most advanced in the galaxy, were ordered to investigate the signal. These ships were meant for diplomacy and peacekeeping, not war. But the galaxy's leaders knew that the humans, once thought to be powerless, had the potential to bring chaos and destruction if left unchecked. Meanwhile, the Eclipse continued its journey. The crew, small and seasoned, knew the stakes were high. They were not just carrying the hopes of their people, but the weight of history itself. Earth had been forgotten by the galaxy for too long, and now it was time to remind them of humanity's true strength. Aboard the ship, Captain Ilara Kane stood before a large viewport, gazing out into the vast expanse of stars. Her crew was calm, prepared for whatever lay ahead. Ilara had been a part of the last human fleet before it had been destroyed, and she had long believed that humanity's time in the galaxy was over. But now, as she looked out into the endless void, she could feel the change in the air. Humanity's return was not just a matter of survival, it was a message to the galaxy. "We're not just going to survive," she murmured to herself. "We're going to show them who we really are." Ilara turned to her crew, her voice steady and resolute. "Prepare for communication. Send a message to the galaxy. Tell them we're coming." The crew worked quickly, inputting the necessary commands to transmit a message to all the alien races that had long thought humanity was gone. The message was clear, simple, and powerful. "We're not finished. We're just getting started." Back in the Galactic Council chambers, the leaders received the message. It was brief, but its impact was immediate. The humans weren't just sending a signal, they were making a statement. And the galaxy knew, deep down, that this was just the beginning. As the message from the Eclipse echoed through the stars, the galaxy remained on edge. The Galactic Council had made its decision. They would send a fleet to investigate the returning humans. They had not forgotten the tales of humanity's once great power, and now, the time had come to see if those stories were true. The Eclipse had now traveled far from Earth's forgotten remains, its course set toward the heart of the galaxy. In its wake, a ripple of tension spread, and the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. No one knew what to expect from humanity's return. Some believed that the humans would simply beg for mercy and offer no resistance, while others feared that their old enemy had only been biding its time, waiting for the moment when it would strike with a fury never before seen. The fleet of the Galactic Council, composed of several powerful ships, moved swiftly toward the coordinates of the Eclipse. Their ships were sleek and advanced, equipped with the latest technology, designed for diplomacy, peacekeeping, and defense. They were not built for war, but they had been prepared for the possibility of conflict. In the Council's chambers, leaders from the most powerful species in the galaxy anxiously awaited the outcome. Back aboard the Eclipse, Captain Ilara Kane paced the bridge, her mind focused on the task ahead. The crew had been working around the clock, making sure their systems were operating at full capacity. They had no idea how the galaxy would respond to humanity's return, but they knew that it was only a matter of time before they came face to face with the powers that had long thought them defeated. "Captain," Lieutenant Mason spoke up from his station. "We've detected several ships approaching. They're moving fast. Looks like they're coming straight for us." Ilara nodded, her heart racing as the reality of the situation hit her. The moment they had been waiting for had arrived. "Prepare for communication," she ordered. "Send a message to the approaching fleet. Let them know we're not here to negotiate." Mason worked quickly, sending out a signal. The message was clear and simple. "Humanity has returned. We seek only to be recognized." Ilara looked out the viewport once more, her gaze steady but filled with anticipation. She knew this moment would define humanity's future in the galaxy. The stakes could not have been higher. The ships of the Galactic Council grew closer, and within moments, the first transmission was received. The voice that spoke over the comms was calm, but there was a clear sense of authority in it. "This is Council Admiral Zahn, Commander of the Galactic Fleet," the voice said. "We have come to verify your message. Humanity is thought to have been eradicated millennia ago. Explain yourself." Ilara took a deep breath and approached the communication console. "Admiral Zahn," she began, her voice steady and firm. "You were right. Humanity was gone, until now. We've returned, and we are no longer the species you once defeated. We seek only one thing, to be recognized as equals." There was a long silence on the other end. The Council ships continued their approach, and the tension in the air grew thicker. Ilara could feel the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. The galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity's return is unexpected. Admiral Zahn's voice finally came through. "We must confer with the Council before making any decisions. Stand by." Ilara nodded to her crew. They had made their statement, but the next steps were out of their hands. As the minutes passed, the eclipse waited, the crew filled with uncertainty, wondering what would come next. On the Council ships, the leaders discussed their options. Some were eager to make peace with the humans, fearing the return of such a powerful species. Others were not so willing to trust them, remembering the destruction humanity had once brought. "We cannot afford to take any chances," a Gathic's representative said. "Humanity was a threat once, and they could be again. We cannot allow them to become a power in the galaxy again." "We cannot ignore them either," the Zaldar leader replied. "They are sending a clear message. If they wanted war, they would have attacked already. They are asking for recognition, nothing more. We must proceed with caution." The debate continued, but there was no clear answer. The Council was divided, and it was clear that this would not be an easy situation to resolve. Time was running out. Back aboard the Eclipse, Captain Ilara felt the weight of her position. She had hoped for a peaceful resolution, but she knew that the galaxy might not be ready for humanity's return. There was too much fear, too much uncertainty. They had to prove that humanity was not the threat it once was, that they had changed, that they had learned from their past mistakes. But in her heart, Ilara knew that humanity had not just returned to the galaxy to survive. They had come to reclaim their place in the stars. And nothing, not even the mighty Galactic Council, would stand in their way. The silence stretched on, and the crew waited for what felt like an eternity. Then the comm system crackled to life once more. "Captain Kane," Admiral Zahn's voice came through. "We have reached a decision. We will send an envoy to meet with you, but know this, the future of humanity in this galaxy is not yet certain. Your actions from here on out will determine what happens next." Ilara's eyes narrowed, her voice unwavering. "Understood, Admiral. But know this, humanity will not be silenced. We will not be forgotten again." With that, the transmission ended, and the crew of the Eclipse knew that the coming days would shape their future. The galaxy had heard their message, but the battle for humanity's place among the stars had only just begun. The question was no longer whether humanity could survive. It was whether they could thrive. The galaxy was about to find out. As the days passed, tension hung thick in the air aboard the Eclipse. The crew, though well-trained, could not escape the weight of what they were about to face. They had delivered their message, but the galaxy's response was far from certain. Humanity's return was a shock to the cosmic order, and no one knew how the various factions would react. Admiral Zahn had kept his word, sending a delegation of envoys to the Eclipse to meet with Captain Ilara. The atmosphere was charged with both curiosity and apprehension. The human fleet, though small compared to the galactic powers, was powerful in its own right. But power alone would not be enough to secure their place among the stars. They had to prove that humanity could be trusted, that they had learned from the mistakes of their past. The delegation of alien representatives arrived aboard the Eclipse, and the meeting took place in the heart of the ship's command center. Ilara stood tall, her eyes focused and resolute as she prepared to address the council's envoys. The delegates were an intimidating sight. Creatures of different species, some humanoid, others far more alien in appearance. They had come from the farthest reaches of the galaxy, each representing a different faction within the Galactic Council. Their gazes were calculating, assessing every movement, every word, as they tried to gauge humanity's true intentions. Admiral Zahn, a tall, silver-skinned figure, stood at the front of the group. He looked at Ilara with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. "Captain Kane," he said in a calm but firm voice, "humanity's return is unexpected. You claim that you seek peace, but history tells a different story. How can we trust you?" Ilara met his gaze without hesitation. "I understand your doubt, Admiral. Humanity's past was filled with mistakes, but we've learned from them. The war that once defined us has long ended. We no longer seek conquest or destruction. We seek only to find our place in this galaxy, to live in peace, not as a conqueror, but as equals." Zahn's eyes narrowed as he studied her, clearly skeptical. "And how do you plan to prove this? How do we know that you will not once again turn your warships against us? You must understand that we cannot take such a risk lightly." Ilara's voice was calm, but there was steel behind her words. "We are not asking for trust based on empty promises. We are offering you a chance to see who we are now. You have already seen the power we possess, but we will prove that we have changed. We are not here to conquer, Admiral. We are here to exist alongside you, not above you." The room fell into an uneasy silence. The delegates exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. The tension was palpable. Ilara could feel the weight of their scrutiny, but she stood firm. Finally, one of the delegates, a creature with shimmering blue skin and tentacles extending from its face, spoke up. "Prove it," the alien said, its voice smooth but sharp. "Show us that humanity has truly changed. Show us that you will not fall back into the ways of the past. Only then can we even begin to consider your place in the galaxy." Ilara took a deep breath. This was what she had feared, the challenge that humanity would face. The galaxy was not going to let them in without proving themselves, but she had expected no less. She had known from the start that humanity's path to acceptance would not be easy. "We are ready to prove ourselves," Ilara said, her voice steady. "Give us the chance, and we will show you the strength of our resolve, not in battle, but in peace. Let us begin by helping you." Zahn raised an eyebrow. "How do you propose to do that?" Ilara turned to her officers, who had been listening carefully. "We have the technology to aid your people. We have systems that can assist with energy shortages, agricultural technology that can help feed your colonies, and medical advancements that could save lives. Our ships are more than just weapons. They are tools that can benefit the entire galaxy." There was another long silence as the delegates considered her words. The skepticism in the room was thick, but Ilara could see a flicker of something else, perhaps hope, perhaps curiosity. She knew that this was just the beginning. Proving humanity's worth would not be accomplished with a single conversation, but it was a start. Very well, Zahn finally said, his tone still cautious. You will have your chance to prove yourselves. We will assign you a task, a mission to help one of the struggling systems within the Council's jurisdiction. If you can complete it successfully, we will consider your place among us. Ilara nodded. We accept the challenge. As the delegates filed out of the room, Ilara felt a sense of cautious optimism. This was what they had been waiting for, a chance to prove humanity's value in the galaxy. But she knew that this mission would be just as difficult as it was important. If humanity failed, their fate in the galaxy would be sealed. The crew of the Eclipse immediately began preparing for the mission. They would need to use all of their ingenuity, all of their technology, and all of their will to succeed. The task was daunting, a diplomatic mission combined with humanitarian aid, but it was their first real test. As the Eclipse prepared to depart for the troubled system, Ilara stood at the helm, looking out into the vast expanse of space. The future of humanity was on the line, and she knew that the outcome of this mission would either seal their place among the stars or cast them back into the shadows of history. The crew gathered around, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Eclipse set its course, and humanity's trial in the galaxy began. The Eclipse glided through the vastness of space, heading toward the system assigned to them by the Galactic Council. The coordinates they were given led to a small planet known as Kalira, a world rich in natural resources, but plagued by internal strife and environmental collapse. Its people were struggling, torn between factions fighting for control over what little resources remained. Ilara stood at the bridge, watching the blue and green planet slowly growing larger on the view screen. The weight of the mission settled heavily on her shoulders. This was more than just a diplomatic mission. It was the future of humanity at stake. If they failed, the galaxy would see them as a threat, a force that could not be trusted. They had no choice but to succeed. We're approaching the system, Lieutenant Drayden announced from his station. Kalira's orbit is unstable due to a nearby gas giant. We'll need to adjust our approach to avoid complications. Ilara nodded, her gaze still fixed on the planet. Understood. We'll make it work. Prepare to enter the planet's atmosphere. As the ship descended toward Kalira, Ilara's mind raced. The mission was simple in theory. Assist the Kalirians in restoring order and peace by offering their advanced technology. But Ilara knew that peace was never that simple. The planet's factions were deeply divided, and humanitarian aid could be seen as an active alliance with one side or the other. Are we ready for the diplomatic meeting? Ilara asked, turning to her crew. Yes, Captain, Lieutenant Drayden replied. The Kalirians are expecting us. I've briefed our team on the local politics. We'll have to tread carefully. The crew gathered in the meeting room as the Eclipse descended into the atmosphere. There was a tense atmosphere aboard the ship. The crew was ready, but the unknowns of this mission weighed heavily on them. We're about to meet the Kalirian leaders, Ilara said, addressing her team. Remember, our goal here is to help them, not to take sides. We have technology, and we will offer it to both sides if necessary. Our mission is to restore order, not fuel further conflict. The team nodded in agreement, though some still wore expressions of uncertainty. They had never faced a situation quite like this, and no one could predict how the Kalirians would respond to humanity's presence. The shuttle carrying Ilara and her team landed outside the Kalirian capital. The planet's surface was rugged, with cities crumbling under the weight of constant fighting. As the shuttle doors opened, the stench of burning fuel and the sound of distant explosions filled the air. The capital had seen better days, and it was clear that the people here were in desperate need of help. A group of Kalirian officials waited for them at the landing site. The leaders were a mix of humanoid and insectoid species, all adorned in the symbols of their respective factions. The tension was immediate. One leader, a tall Kalirian with dark skin and a stern expression, stepped forward to greet them. "You are the humans who claim to offer help," the Kalirian leader said, his voice cold. "Do you think you can solve our problems with your technology?" Ilara stood tall, meeting the leader's gaze. "We don't claim to have all the answers, but we do have the resources to help. We can provide medical assistance, restore infrastructure, and offer a way to bring stability back to your planet. We are not here to take sides. We are here to help all of you." The leader's eyes narrowed. "And what do you expect in return? You think we'll just accept your technology without question? This planet is divided. We have no reason to trust you." Ilara didn't flinch. "We ask for nothing in return, but the opportunity to help. Your planet's future depends on cooperation, not conflict. We're offering you a way to rebuild, together." The tension was palpable. The Calirians exchanged uncertain glances, and Ilara could feel their mistrust in the air. It was clear that this mission wouldn't be as simple as they had hoped. The factions on Calira were too entrenched, too suspicious of outsiders. If they couldn't gain their trust, there would be no chance of achieving peace. "We will allow you to show us what you can do," the Calirian leader finally said, though the words were laced with skepticism. "But know this. If you fail to live up to your promises, the consequences will be dire." Ilara nodded, her voice steady. "We understand, and we will not fail." The first challenge had been met, but it was only the beginning. The crew of the Eclipse began their work, setting up medical stations and distributing supplies. They repaired the water filtration systems and began installing energy cells to power the cities. But the real challenge was yet to come, convincing the Calirian factions to cooperate. The factions were divided into two main groups: the industrialists, who controlled the cities and the resources, and the environmentalists, who believed in restoring the planet to its natural state. Each side had their own vision for Calira's future, and neither trusted the other. Ilara knew that in order to succeed, she would need to broker a peace between these two groups. But the wounds between them were deep, and the mistrust was thick. Every attempt at negotiation had failed in the past. But humanity's presence could be the catalyst for something new, a new hope that perhaps peace was possible. The days stretched on as Ilara and her team worked tirelessly, but every attempt to mediate between the factions was met with resistance. The environmentalists refused to work with the industrialists, seeing them as destroyers of the planet, while the industrialists saw the environmentalists as naive dreamers who wanted to return the world to a state of chaos. Ilara's patience was wearing thin, but she refused to give up. She knew that the Calirians had no other option but to accept humanity's help. It was now or never. Then, one evening, as the sun set over the planet's broken horizon, Ilara stood at the edge of the capital, looking out over the city. The first signs of cooperation were beginning to take shape. The factions, though still wary of each other, were starting to work together on the rebuilding efforts. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "We've made progress," Drayden said, coming to stand beside her. Ilara nodded. "We've taken the first step, but this is just the beginning. We have to show them that cooperation is the only way forward. If we can help them rebuild, maybe, just maybe, they'll see the value of peace." The Eclipse crew continued their work, offering their aid, their technology, and their determination. The mission was far from over, but the seeds of change had been planted. Whether or not humanity could succeed in bringing true peace to Calira remained to be seen. But for now, Ilara and her crew had proven that humanity could make a difference in a galaxy that had forgotten them. Days turned into weeks, and despite the mounting challenges, Ilara and her team pressed on. The streets of Calira's capital were filled with the sounds of construction and the efforts of both the industrialists and environmentalists. Slowly, trust began to build, though it was fragile. Still, Ilara remained focused on her goal, peace, but the journey had only just begun. The Calirians' initial skepticism had not disappeared entirely. Some factions were still unwilling to put their differences aside, while others had started to make progress. It seemed like each victory was met with a new obstacle, but Ilara refused to give up. She couldn't afford to. One afternoon, As the sun cast long shadows over the capital, a sudden message came through. It was from the leader of the environmentalists, a woman named Era. She had sent a request for a private meeting, something that had not happened in weeks. Ilara knew this could be a turning point. She met Era in one of the newly repaired conference rooms, where the air was heavy with anticipation. The woman walked in, her eyes weary but determined. She didn't sit down immediately, as if gathering her thoughts before speaking. "You've made progress, Captain," Era said slowly, her voice soft but filled with weight. "I won't deny that. The water systems are running again, and the people are starting to feel hope. But there's still one thing I cannot accept." Ilara raised an eyebrow. "What is that?" Era paused, her gaze steady. "The industrialists. They have been given too much power, too much control. They destroyed the planet to build their cities, their machines. And now you expect us to just forget that." Ilara understood the woman's pain. The environmentalists had watched their world slowly die, their natural resources ravaged by the industrialists in pursuit of endless expansion. The scars on Kalira's land were visible in every corner, and for Era's people, the pain of losing their home was still fresh. "I understand your anger," Ilara replied, her tone calm. "But if we don't work together, Kalira will remain on the brink of collapse. I know that the industrialists have done harm to your world, but we have an opportunity to fix it, together." Era looked at her, eyes narrowing. "You think it's that simple?" "I don't know if it's simple," Ilara said honestly, "but I do know that peace is possible. If you don't let go of the past, we will never move forward. If we let old grudges divide us, Kalira will be lost forever." For a moment, Era didn't speak. The room was filled with a heavy silence. The air seemed to press in on them, as though the very weight of the planet's struggles were bearing down. Then, Era finally spoke again. "You are right, Captain. We can't afford to keep fighting each other. But how can we trust that the industrialists will change? How do we know they will not continue their destruction once this is over?" Ilara leaned forward, meeting Era's gaze directly. "Trust is built, not given. You have to show them that you're willing to work with them. I'm not asking you to forget what they've done, but I am asking you to take the first step toward healing. You've seen what we've done with the cities and the infrastructure. You've seen the difference humanity can make when we work together. Now, we need you to trust us, and each other." There was another long pause before Era spoke again. This time, her voice was softer, but there was a trace of conviction in it. "I'll take the first step," she said. "I'll speak with the industrialists. But it's not just about words. It's about actions. If they prove that they are willing to change, then maybe, just maybe, we can rebuild this world." Ilara nodded, feeling the weight of her own promise. "We will help you, Era. We will help you rebuild. And together, we will make sure Kalira has a future." With that, Era stood up and left the room. Ilara watched her go, knowing that this was a crucial moment in their mission. The fate of Kalira was still uncertain, but for the first time in weeks, there was hope, a glimmer of something that had been lost for too long. The next few days were filled with tense negotiations. Era met with the leaders of the industrialists, and the discussions were heated. It seemed like every step forward was met with resistance, but there was a shift in the air. The Kalirians were starting to see the value in cooperation. The promise of rebuilding, of hope, was beginning to take root. Ilara's team continued their work, repairing the cities and setting up medical stations. They were more than just soldiers and engineers. They were ambassadors of peace, carrying humanity's legacy with them. The eclipse had become a symbol of hope, not just for the Kalirians, but for the galaxy as a whole. And then, one day, a message arrived that changed everything. It was from the Kalirian leader of the industrialists, a man named Tarek. He requested a meeting with Ilara, and this time there was no skepticism in his voice. There was only a sense of purpose. When Ilara arrived, she was greeted by Tarek and Era, standing side by side. Turek was a tall, imposing figure, his face weathered by years of leadership and conflict. But his eyes, when he met Ilara's, were different. They were filled with resolve. "We've decided to trust you, Captain," Turek said. "We've seen the change that cooperation has brought, and we want to be a part of it. The industrialists are ready to work together, to help heal the planet, and to rebuild, not just for us, but for everyone on Kalera." Ilara smiled, a weight lifting from her shoulders. "I'm glad to hear that, but this is only the beginning. There's still much work to do." Era and Turek nodded in agreement. Together, they had begun to bridge the gap between two warring factions. The Kalerians were starting to believe in the possibility of a future built on cooperation, not conflict. For the first time since humanity's arrival, Ilara felt the weight of the galaxy shift. The mission was far from over, but the foundation for peace had been laid. Kalera, a world on the brink of destruction, now had a chance that had once seemed impossible. And Ilara knew that this was only the beginning of what humanity could achieve when they truly worked together. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of progress. Ilara, Era, and Turek worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between their people. The once divided factions of Kalera were starting to come together, each side realizing the power of cooperation. The industrialists began to invest in sustainable energy, while the environmentalists helped to revitalize the damaged ecosystems. The people of Kalera, once so bitterly divided, now shared a common goal: healing their world. Ilara's crew, the crew of the Eclipse, was at the heart of these efforts. They didn't just repair cities and medical stations, they helped to heal the wounds of Kalera's people. Ilara's team had become more than just soldiers, they were symbols of unity. The Eclipse had become a beacon of hope in the darkest corners of the galaxy. But the road to peace was not without its challenges. Every day, there were new problems to solve. Old grudges died hard. There were still pockets of resistance, factions who weren't ready to let go of their hate. Yet, with every step forward, the divide between the two sides grew smaller. One evening, as the stars shone brightly over the Kalerian capital, Ilara stood on the observation deck of the Eclipse, watching as the massive ship's engines hummed softly in the background. The once silent world was now filled with life and activity, and for the first time, Ilara felt as though the galaxy's future was bright. She wasn't alone. Era and Turek stood with her, gazing out over the city below. "It's hard to believe," Era said quietly, "that just a few months ago, Kalera was on the brink of collapse." Ilara nodded. "We've come a long way, but the real challenge is just beginning. What we've done, this is only the start. The future of Kalera depends on the choices we make now." Turek, ever the pragmatist, spoke next. "We can't afford to let our guard down. There are still those who resist change. But I believe we can build a future that no one can tear down. We've seen what we're capable of when we work together." Era placed a hand on her heart. "And when we heal what's been broken." Ilara smiled, feeling the weight of her words. "Together, we will rebuild this world. We'll heal the scars of the past and create a future of peace." As the three of them stood together, the sounds of Kalera's revival filled the air. The ships that once fought in space now worked side by side to clean the skies, to restore what had been lost. The oceans, once polluted and dying, now sparkled under the light of Kalera's twin suns. But even as hope blossomed on Kalera, the galaxy was watching. The Eclipse had made a statement. The galaxy knew now that humanity wasn't just a bystander. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with. Ilara knew that their actions on Kalera would be felt across the stars, and that their fight for peace had just begun. The message was clear. Humanity had faced overwhelming odds and had succeeded. Where others had failed, they had found a way to make peace, to build, to heal. And as the days passed, Ilara realized that humanity's future was more than just surviving. It was about thriving, about creating a legacy that would shape the galaxy for centuries to come. As she turned to walk away from the observation deck, she saw the crew of the Eclipse working together in the distance, their ship now a symbol of humanity's strength and compassion. The battle for Kalira had been won, but the war for the galaxy was far from over. Still, Ilara couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. In the face of impossible odds, humanity had risen. And as long as they continued to work together, as long as they held on to the lessons of the past, there was nothing that could stand in their way. The galaxy had underestimated them once. It wouldn't make that mistake again.